This presentation looks at understanding the business environment and in particular the way the factors that influence the profitability of an industry impact on an organisation's strategy. The organisation sits within an industry, and the industry sits within the general business environment. We can also make a distinction between the general environment and the task environment. An organisation interacts more directly with some elements of the environment. Indeed, it is where an organisation obtains its resources and sells its products and services. This is known as the task environment. The general environment can be analysed using the PESTLE tool. That's the political, economic, socio-cultural, technological, environmental and legal factors. These are covered in a separate presentation. The Porter's 5 Forces model helps us understand the influences on the industry that will impact on the organisation's strategy. Porter identified 5 forces that impact on an organisation's strategy. They are the threat of new entrants, the threat of substitute products or services, the bargaining power of suppliers and the bargaining power of buyers, and the degree of competitive rivalry. Let's look at these in more detail. Let's begin by looking at the threat of new entrants. This is sometimes referred to as barriers to entry. If an industry is profitable, it will attract new entrants, which will impact on the degree of competitiveness and ultimately the profitability of the industry. If, however, there are significant barriers to entry, such as high capital requirements, specific skills, or high volumes of business to achieve sufficient economies of scale, it can put off new entrants, and the existing members of the industry can retain their profitability levels. Therefore, organisations will seek to raise barriers to entry by developing strong brands, securing supply networks, patent protections, or other strategies to make it difficult for new entrants to compete. The threat of substitute products or services to the output of the industry. It is important not just to watch your direct competitors, but those that could become competitors in the future. In other words, those organisations that can supply an alternative means of satisfying customer needs. A good example of this is the regional airlines that service business customers. They are providing much more than just airline travel, but facilitating business meetings. Therefore, video conferencing, which also does this, became a real threat to the regional airlines. The bargaining power of suppliers and the bargaining power of buyers. There is a link to the task environment here in that organisations have close links with both groups. If the balance of negotiating power is in the hands of suppliers, it can put upward pressure on costs and reduces the profitability if the increasing costs cannot be passed on to customers. In industries where there are a limited number of suppliers, the suppliers can often have the upper hand. Similarly, in business-to-business industries where buyers have the balance of negotiating power, it can put downward pressure on prices. Strategies such as deal sourcing or forward and backward integration, establishing long-term agreements to create switching costs, cooperating through the supply chain, or building brand loyalty are some of the potential strategies that firms could employ. The degree of competitive rivalry in the industry has a strong influence on organisations' strategy. Indeed, the PESTLE factors in the general environment and the structure of the industry can impact on its competitiveness. In this representation, 4 of the forces cross into the general environment and also impact on the degree of competitive rivalry in the industry. Therefore, it is not just a case of monitoring the individual forces, but the way they may interact with each other. It is also worth just considering that each industry sector within the supply chain can be viewed via Porter's 5 Forces model, and therefore the balance of power between suppliers and buyers can become significant, as in business-to-business sectors, the buyers of the raw material industry view the raw material industry as suppliers. This illustrates that organisations need to be aware of the forces impacting on the industries of their suppliers and customers. Analysing the business environment is a continuous process known as environmental scanning, but it is only part of the strategic management process. Organisations, by adopting certain strategies, can influence the environment. For example, introducing new disruptive technologies can change the way the industry operates. Think of the way Amazon changed retailing via the use of the internet. Therefore, organisations should adopt a proactive stance in actively seeking to influence the environment in which they operate. This video is part of a series of short videos that explain specific aspects of the strategic management framework and cover some of the strategy models that can be used in the analysis, formulation, implementation and review and control of strategy and the role of the management accountant. This presentation is provided as part of the support materials for the book Management Accounting in Support of Strategy by me, Graham S. Pitcher, published by Business Expert Press.